Yeah, a few comments, not so much on the data, but on the importance of the 360 and the PBC 360, Hogan 360. It's interesting that the EQ report and the 360 were developed fairly independently, and yet they kind of collide or intersect very naturally. And so I have a few thoughts about where I see these assessments fitting in, a few thoughts about human competence, I would say, and some considerations on the specific profiles just discussed. First, I think, going back to Daniel Goleman's original book on emotional intelligence, I think the book achieved a great deal of success because it criticized IQ. And I think some of the criticism of IQ were refuted by the academic community, but still stand primarily because people with high IQ often don't have a reputation for being smart. Okay? And at Hogan, we care about reputation, and we have always said that you assess reputation directly via 360 feedbacks. Okay? Now we have a good 360 to do this directly. There's a point of interface between a PBC, Hogan 360 and EQ, as you have seen, but I should state very clearly that our EQ report has been designed to predict 360s of EQ or of people skills. So it's in the absence of a 360 when the EQ report is most useful. In a way, when you have a 360 that focuses on people skills, that gives you an idea on a person's intrapersonal and interpersonal skills, the actual EQ report becomes quite trivial. Okay? Yes, it might give you some more details about that person's where their strengths and weaknesses are, but it might be that a person is managing their weaknesses or not displaying their strengths in a particular context. And here's another key value of 360s, which I think we could see from Peter's presentation, that when subordinates, colleagues, supervisors, or others evaluate somebody's competencies, somebody's performance, somebody's behavior, they are also contextualizing that person's performance, behavior, and profile. So they don't just assess somebody's resilience, or somebody's prudence, or somebody's altruism, or somebody's judgment, somebody's EQ, but they assess them in connection or vis-a-vis which how much these things matter, how much these things are important. And you can't get that from a generic standard standalone report, which is decontextualized as first. So I think I just want to say, if you can, then always use a 360. In the absence of a 360, or if it's too time-consuming, too expensive, too unpractical to put people through a 360, things like the HPI and the HDS are the best alternative or the best proxy. And of course, there are advantages of combining both things. And finally, I think one of the things that we have tried to assess and try to address with our EQ report, and something that makes our take on EQ slightly different from the mainstream approach, is that if EQ is a function of personality, if EQ is an umbrella term to encapsulate different competencies relating to intrapersonal and interpersonal management, then high scores can't always be good, and low scores can't always be bad. You know, there should be positive implications of low EQ and negative implications of high EQ. And we have indeed found in our studies, our research, that there are some fairly counterproductive consequences of implications of high emotional intelligence scores. For example, people with very high EQ are often seen as complacent, smug, immune to negative feedback, and they find it hard to provide negative feedback as well. Okay. and some potential advantages of people with low EQ. They're often seen as more creative, passionate, and sincere or honest, sometimes too sincere or honest for their own sake. So they kind of leak a lot of the emotions that they should maybe try to hide or inhibit. So again, this is something that you Hoganites will have heard many, many times. Reputation for us is the key. We're not trying to assess who you really are or what your self-impressions are, but how people perceive you. And I think that's the main reason why we're very excited to have a great 360 tool, and one that is so kind of naturally linked and that fits so well with everything we have been doing so far in the scope of personality. And what I particularly like, Peter, is the fact that with fairly few questions, because it's 55 or 60, you can extract so much information, and that you have quantitative data and metrics, but also comments and qualitative information, and that you have all these different iterations where you can focus on the key domains of competencies, but also expand and go into more detail. So it's I guess I can sum up this by saying that it's a great tool, and I wish I had designed it.